My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 37 years old, and I'm a financial analyst for a small investment firm here in Cleveland. The air in my childhood home, usually thick with the comforting scent of yeast and warm sugar from my parents' bakery, was instead heavy with stale grief and a cloying sweetness from an untouched sympathy casserole. We were gathered in the living room, a week after my father's funeral, waiting for Mr. Henderson, the family attorney, to arrive. My mother sat on the floral sofa, clutching a tissue, while my older brother, Marcus, paced by the bay window. He paused, turning to face us, a smug, almost triumphant look on his face. "You know," he began, loud enough for our cousins and aunts to hear, "Dad always said the bakery was my future. My inheritance. I've got so many plans for Vance's bakery now. New branding, maybe a second location." He beamed, as if he'd just won the lottery. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach, a familiar mix of annoyance and dread. I simply stared at him, my mouth a thin line, but inside, a quiet, insistent voice was already forming a question. That question, I knew, would change everything. To understand Marcus's audacity, you need to know about Vance's bakery. It wasn't just a business, it was the heart of our family. My grandparents started it in 1948, a small corner shop known for its sourdough and apple fritters. My father, Robert Vance, inherited it and poured his life into it, waking before dawn, his hands dusted with flour. He kept a small, wooden box in the back, filled with index cards detailing the health and feeding schedule of his original sourdough starter, a legacy he'd received from his own father. My mother, Sarah, handled the books and the front counter, her cheerful demeanor a perfect complement to Dad's quiet dedication. Marcus, for years my senior, always saw himself as the heir apparent. From a young age, he'd talk about when I take over the bakery. He'd spend summers there, mostly socializing with the staff or experimenting with new, often disastrous, recipes. He was charismatic, quick with a joke, and everyone loved him. Dad, a man of few words, would just smile and nod, which Marcus interpreted as full endorsement. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one, the observer. I loved the bakery too, but not in the same way. I loved the precision of the recipes, the rhythm of the business, the way the numbers balanced. I'd help Mom with the invoices, learning the margins, the cost of ingredients, the ebb and flow of customer demand. I saw the bakery as a complex system, not just a romantic legacy. This analytical approach led me to my career in finance, but I never lost my understanding of the bakery's inner workings. As Dad's health began to decline over the last 2 years, Marcus's pronouncements grew louder. He'd visit the bakery more often, not to help, but to give unsolicited advice to the head baker, Mr. Petrov, or to discuss future strategies with Mom. He'd talk about franchising, about moving away from the traditional sourdough to more trendy, sweeter items. Mom, always trying to keep the peace, would just nod along, her eyes often darting to me with a worried expression. I knew Dad's greatest fear wasn't dying, it was seeing his legacy, his beloved sourdough, changed beyond recognition. He'd often say to me, quietly, "The starter needs consistency, Eleanor. It doesn't like big, sudden changes." I thought that was the worst of it. It wasn't. 6 months before Dad passed, he had a particularly bad spell. Marcus rushed to his bedside, and when he emerged, he had an almost glowing look on his face. "Dad and I had a long talk," he announced to Mom and me. "He basically gave me his blessing to take over. Said he trusts me completely with the bakery." Mom looked skeptical, but Dad, recovering in bed, just gave a weak smile when we asked. He was too tired to clarify. Marcus took this as carte blanche. He started telling family friends, even some of the regular customers, that he was preparing to step into Dad's shoes. He'd call me, asking for advice on restructuring the bakery's finances or optimizing the supply chain, but he'd never actually listened to my suggestions. He just wanted validation for his grand plans. He even started sketching out new logos on napkins during family dinners, all featuring a stylized M4 Marcus, not V4 Vance. My father passed away peacefully in his sleep, just 3 weeks ago. The funeral was a blur of tears and shared memories. Throughout it all, Marcus maintained his air of the grieving, yet resolute, air. He spoke eloquently at the wake about Dad's vision and how he intended to carry it forward, always hinting at his future leadership. The day before Mr. Henderson was scheduled to read the will, Marcus called me. "Eleanor," he said, his voice brimming with barely contained excitement, "I've already started looking at commercial properties for the second location. And I'm talking to a graphic designer about the new branding. I think Dad would be really proud of how quickly I'm moving on this." He sounded so utterly convinced, so full of himself, that I almost believed he had some secret knowledge. But I knew Dad. He was methodical, traditional, and deeply cautious, especially when it came to the bakery. That's why, when Marcus stood there, bragging about his bakery inheritance in front of our assembled family, my patience snapped. Mr. Henderson, a kind man with silver hair and a gentle demeanor, finally arrived, carrying a worn leather briefcase. He exchanged pleasantries, offered his condolences again, and then sat in the armchair opposite Mom. He opened his briefcase, retrieved a thick envelope, and pulled out a stack of legal papers. The air in the room grew quiet, all eyes on him. Marcus, however, couldn't resist one last flourish. He leaned forward, catching my eye. "Eleanor, you'll be pleased to know I'm even thinking of a small corner for your favorite lemon bars in the new store," he said, a patronizing smile on his face, as if he were granting me a favor. I looked at him, then at Mr. Henderson, who was now adjusting his glasses, preparing to speak. I felt a strange calm settle over me, a clarity I hadn't expected. My voice, when it came, was low but firm, cutting through the silence just before Mr. Henderson could begin. "Marcus," I said, my gaze unwavering, "before Mr. Henderson starts, I have a question for you." He blinked, surprised by my sudden interjection. "Yes, Elle," he asked, still smiling, assuming I was about to praise his foresight. "You've been talking a lot about your inheritance, your plans for the bakery," I continued, letting the words hang in the air. "I just want to know, have you actually read the will?" The smile slid off his face. He looked genuinely confused, then annoyed. "Of course not, Elle. No one has. That's what Mr. Henderson is here for. But Dad and I talked. It's understood." He waved a dismissive hand, as if my question was irrelevant. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "Indeed, Marcus, no one has read the official document yet. It's my duty to do so now." He then began to read, his voice steady and clear. The first few paragraphs were standard, provisions for Mom, personal effects, a few minor bequests to cousins. Then he got to the bakery. I watched Marcus's face carefully. His expression was one of eager anticipation, a small, knowing smirk playing on his lips. Mr. Henderson read, "To my beloved son, Marcus Vance, I leave the sum of $50,000, to be used as he sees fit, with the hope that he will invest it wisely." Marcus's jaw dropped. $50,000 was generous, but it was not the bakery. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Mr. Henderson continued, "To my beloved daughter, Eleanor Vance, understanding her meticulous nature and her deep respect for tradition, I bequeath Vance's bakery, including all its assets, recipes, and the original sourdough starter. It is my wish that she continues its operation, preserving its legacy for future generations, should she choose to accept this responsibility." The room went completely silent. You could have heard a flour sack drop. Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. His face went from disbelief to a deep, angry crimson. He turned to me, his eyes wide with betrayal. "What?" he choked out. This isn't right. Dad promised me. He told me." My mother, who had been listening with a look of growing relief, finally spoke up, her voice gentle. "Marcus, your father never promised you the bakery. He said he trusted you. He said that to both of you, in different ways. But he always knew Eleanor understood the business, truly understood it." Marcus was on his feet now, pacing erratically. "This is a joke. Eleanor, you put him up to this, didn't you?" You manipulated him. I shook my head, calm. Marcus, Dad wrote this will over a year ago. He had it updated after his last health scare. He wanted to ensure the bakery, his legacy, was protected. You talked about changing everything, about franchising. Dad heard you. Mr. Henderson chimed in. The will was drafted and signed with Mr. Vance's full mental capacity, witnessed and notarized. There's no ambiguity. The rest of the reading was a blur. Marcus stormed out shortly after, slamming the front door, leaving a jarring silence in his wake. The family looked at me with a mixture of surprise and understanding. My Aunt Margaret, who had run a successful catering business, came over and hugged me. Your father was a smart man, Eleanor. He knew who had the steady hands. My mother just squeezed my hand, a silent apology and a profound thank you in her eyes. Over the next few days, Marcus refused to speak to me. He sent angry, accusatory texts, claiming I had stolen his birthright. He even tried to call Mr. Henderson, demanding to see previous versions of the will, convinced there was a conspiracy. Mr. Henderson politely informed Hi.M. that the most recent, valid will was the only document that mattered. It was a painful rift, but it was also a necessary one. I knew I couldn't run the bakery with Marcus constantly undermining my decisions or trying to take credit. I accepted the inheritance. It wasn't an easy decision, it meant a significant career change, leaving my analyst job, at least for a while. But I felt a deep responsibility to my father, to his legacy, and to the community that loved Vance's bakery. The first thing I did was visit the bakery. Mr. Petrov, the head baker, greeted me with a knowing smile. He'd seen it all over the years. We walked to the back, to the small, wooden box. Inside, the sourdough starter was bubbling gently, a living testament to generations of care. It needed to be fed, nurtured, kept consistent. It didn't like big, sudden changes. I knew exactly what my father meant. I spent the next few months learning every aspect of the daily operations, working alongside Mr. Petrov, understanding the rhythms, the early mornings, the precise measurements. I kept the original recipes, but I also introduced a few new items, carefully, slowly, always testing them with our loyal customers first. The bakery continued to thrive. Marcus eventually cooled down, but the relationship between us was permanently altered. He rarely visited the bakery, and when he did, he was polite but distant. He used his $50,000 to invest in a tech startup, which, from what I heard, was struggling. He never brought up the bakery inheritance again. I sometimes wonder if he ever actually read the entire will, or if he just chose to remember what he wanted to hear. The little wooden box, with its precious sourdough starter, now sits on a shelf in my office at the bakery. It's a constant reminder of legacy, trust, and the quiet strength of truth.